It's baseball season. It is baseball season, and there is no better way to kick off baseball season than by having a conversation with Detroit Tigers manager A.J. Hinch. Super, super excited. This is the second year in a row that we've done this, so can't wait to pick his brain about a few things, recap the magic that was the run they had a season ago, and look ahead to this 2025 campaign. Incredibly, and this will not be the last time I say this, incredibly humbled by this opportunity and the fact that he's given me the time of day. This is I'll talk more about it because I want to make sure we do a good job with the interview first before I wax poetic about this moment. But before we get to the interview, just a few things I want to get out of the way. You can find all of our content at castellanicontent.com, and we are updating that all the time. Post-game videos, podcasts, vlogs, what have you. I was talking to Austin about this the other day, but we're going to really try to expand our content during baseball season. And that doesn't just mean baseball-related videos. There's going to be time on our hands, and we want to do some fun stuff with vlogs, lists, whether it's film-based content, stuff like that. So we really want to kill it this baseball season, and we're going to continue to try to give you the best content possible at Castellani 2014 on Twitter. You can find the links to all of our social media platforms on there as well. Continuing to grow on TikTok, just crossed the 5,000 mark there and really trending upward. The Michigan basketball videos have done wonders for us, so I really appreciate that. I think Austin and I are probably going to be out in East Lansing, maybe at a Buffalo Wild Wings near campus as both Michigan and Michigan State play in the Sweet 16 this week. Maybe doing a little vlog for that. Who knows? Maybe on Sunday they play each other, potentially in the Elite Eight, which, the world can end. But yeah, so lots to look forward to. But of course, right now it is Tiger season, and we are getting locked in. This is my best time of year, so I'm very excited. Yeah, sounds crazy, and when I say it out loud, even though we did this last year, but even when I say it out loud, it sounds kind of wild, man. About to talk to the Detroit Tigers manager. This is a very unique experience, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So let's jump ahead to our interview with A.J. Hinch. Chris and Company rolls on with, I guess, 2 times. It's now a tradition, I would say, annually for us to meet for Chris and Company pre-opening day chat with Tigers skipper A.J. Hinch. You were talking to me off the air. Much appreciative. The Tigers go on this incredible run after you do my show. Which thank you. But also, our second ever episode was Tarik Skubal, and he went on to have a pretty good season. So there might be a little bit of magic Chris and Company pixie dust that we're throwing around here. So I appreciate
Maybe I'll throw you some dudes. I got some people that I need some magic dust on. So let's do it.
Yeah, no, hey man, the more the merrier. I appreciate it. But you guys are obviously in San Francisco right now, close to opening day. I was looking this up before we recorded. Here's a little A.J. Hinch trivia for you, because you had 1 career hit in San Francisco. Now, it was not at Oracle. It was 99 the year before. It was before I think it was AT&T for the longest time. It was a triple in a triples park. So you got that. Do you know who the pitcher was?
No, I don't.
Right-hander. Yeah. Mark Gardner. You did it in, I think your second or third at bat in a game in 1999 against the Giants. So I went.
So can I tell you another story about that? So that was,
of course. Yeah, please.
I also was robbed of a homer by Barry Bonds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Old school plexiglass. That was the coldest stadium I think I've ever been in. And that includes April games in the AL Central. So candlestick the wind could blow, but Barry robs a ball. So I would have had an extra homer, but no luck.
Yeah, the plexiglass, man, that's definitely a thing of the 80s and 90s. The old Metrodome had that. I remember when
No doubt.
you go back, you watch 91 World Series, you got Kirby Puckett, Robin Homers off the plexiglass there. That's an old-fashioned thing. Definitely a bygone era. But look, obviously the last time we talked was before last season, and you talked about how, at the very end, how once you get a taste of success, it can become a very addicting thing. Is there a different energy in spring training after a season like what you guys had last year? Do you feel like there's a bit more of a pep in people's step?
Yeah. I don't know if it's energy as much as it's perspective. Like we throw so many things at these guys. So like every scenario, little bits and pieces, things they need to get better, as players, the team stuff that you're trying to build, like, Gleyber Torres comes to spring training and now I got a couple of shortstops that I need to help develop some chemistry up the middle to, roles in the bullpen, the rotation battles, but there's great perspective on the why. Like why we're doing it is to taste exactly what we did last year and then go beyond. We were one win away from the ALCS, and then anything can happen. A 7-game series, you got Skubal a couple games, and who knows what happens. You can dream on something that you've now experienced. And so I think the energy is always high, optimism high in spring. I think perspective changes because these guys now know, like, oh, this is what they're talking about, that everything matters, or this is why, maybe in April we're trying to, preserve maybe a few innings. I'd rather take you out an inning too early rather than an inning too late at the beginning of the season. The dudes know why now because of what they've experienced.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely understand the importance of the process at that point. Yeah. Once you've seen it kind of played out over an entire season. And we had Justin Henry Malloy on a few weeks ago, and he brought up the fact that the whole idea of you guys not being like battle tested come playoff time wasn't really a thing that he was concerned about, because you guys had kind of been in playoff mode for the longest time with the fact that you were playing, building your way up through the standings. Do you feel like your team, I mean, you never want to have to come back from as many games back as you guys were, but do you feel like your team ended up benefiting from the fact that you kind of were in that win or go home mode for several months?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things that came out of that. One is we learned how to play playoff games. Yeah. Which what does that mean? That means like early decisions in the game, pinch hitting, taking pitchers out, matchups. The obsessiveness with every 90-foot matters. And so when you could go first to third, we became the best first to third team from August on as we got more athletic. And so putting the next guy in a position to be pretty good kind of set up like what happened in Houston, where we were going first to third. Andy Ibanez comes off the bench and gets the base hit off Hader. And like all of it comes into full circle. And so, but we did that for 6-7 weeks. I mean, it was game 7. We kind of joked about it, but we did it. It was like game 7 for 6 weeks. And so by the time we got to the playoffs, like there was no exhale. Like we've been doing this for a while now, and nothing was surprising our players. It wasn't like, oh, all of a sudden, Will Vest or Bo Brisky's getting up in the third inning. They're like, we've been doing that since like, other than Skubal starts, we were doing it, throughout the rotation. So I think that was the playoff tested part. And honestly, and I use this as motivation with our team. Like that's what made me mad about the narrative going into Houston, as if we were this like non-playoff tested team. Now I understand we were going into Houston and they had, the last decade, they were the premier team. Yeah. But our guys were pretty well tested. And I found our guys were way more relaxed in that environment. And it has to be because where it was hard to play? San Diego in September with the game on the line. Like Oakland, as they were, kind of down the stretch, were playing better and all this drama around the A's. And we had to go in there and we had to win, as many games as we could. We come home and playing against Tampa, which regardless of how their season went, they're really tough to match up against. Yeah. Like all those were playoff caliber games for us. And so when we got to Houston and I got the question to the podium, like, oh, you have this like young try-hard team. And I was like, BS, we have a team that's been playing these playoff games for a month and a half, and our guys will show up, and they did.
Yeah, and what goes overlooked is that you guys came back on that final homestand kind of in control of your destiny. In order to do that, you had to go 5-1 on a 6-game road trip against 2 playoff teams. I mean, you had to sweep Kansas City and win 2 out of 3 in Baltimore. So it was almost as if the difficulty of your schedule ended up benefiting you guys long term as you kind of continue to march on. Obviously, you always bring up the fact that at the end of every season, or after you guys are eliminated, you talk to every player and kind of assess their season and what the future might look like for them. Do you do that like with yourself as a manager and kind of assess the job that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like there were many steps along the way of like, we actually got off to a pretty good start last year. We opened up and then we went into a little bit of a lull. We got the injury bug and Carp goes out and Greeny goes out and Jack missed a couple of starts, around the trade deadline. Then there was the trade deadline. And I always look at how I handle situations like that in-game, post-game with players, lineups, like did I read everybody correctly? We had some really tough conversations sending guys out. We had the emergence of young players coming up. And then, the whole pitching chaos and winning at the margins for the better part of the season on the offensive side. The pitching side was very specific to the latter half of the season. Once Reese was out, Jack was traded. We're trying to break in young pitching and then had a breather every 5 days because Tarik Skubal was the best pitcher in baseball. So that I look back at all those scenarios and you're not going to bat 1,000 as a manager, right? Like you're going to, man, I wonder if I should have done this or done that. I'll take what happened to this team and how we were able to build confidence and build a style of play that really showed up late when it mattered the most. But I sit with Fett and talk pitching, or Michael and talk hitting, and George, and about all of our processes, because now like we're back at the bottom of the mountain and we got to go climb it again with a slightly different team, but a lot of guys that now know what the end prize is. We just have to remind ourselves it's a long road to get there.
I don't know if you necessarily get to the point of kind of ranking things, but like, did you view last season as one of your most effective jobs as a manager?
It's a good question. Yes. I mean, obviously I'm proud of what we did as a staff. I mean, I'm the guy out front and I have to answer the questions pregame, postgame, and my staff did an incredible job. Like, I mean, getting the buy-in, comes from the manager desk, but it also comes from the 3 pitching coaches that we have. Like Juan's down in the bullpen on his own, dealing with the pitchers and the psyche of getting them ready to come in the game at a moment's notice. Robin Lund is always sort of tweaking this analysis on how do we, make, certain guys' pitches a little bit better, get them to move better, get them to be optimal in that game. And then Chris Fetter's probably the best game planning pitching coach that I've been around. And he has, you talk about magic touch, is going out in the middle of a game and being able to settle things down and get somebody redirected in a positive way. So, and going to the hitting side, breaking in young hitters with our hitting department. So our staff did an incredible job. Obviously, I did my best to maximize the roster the best we could and not only get buy-in, but get guys to play well and then the players go out and do it. And I love giving credit to the players and the staff. And I did my part, coaches did their part, players did their part, and we had an epic, run at the end and then celebrations multiple times. One at home when we clinched, one in Houston was a blast personally and professionally. And then we were one or two, outs away from, having even another one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was remarkable. And you brought up the pitching chaos earlier, and I do want to talk about that. But you mentioned also the fact that you guys were the best in baseball going from first to third last season. And that I think as a team, just as a base running team, you were one of the best in the sport. And I wouldn't, you have athletes, but I wouldn't categorize your roster as necessarily like it's not a team of a ton of base stealers with, a ton of speed. You have guys like Parker and guys that can run. What are like the intangibles in your mind that lead to having a good base running team, even if the players themselves might not be by definition speedsters and guys that are stealing back?
Yeah, great question, because being a good base runner, you can have a bad base runner, but a guy makes up with it with good speed. Yeah. But you can't have a good base runner who makes bad decisions or who doesn't have great prep. So like we talk a ton about primary lead, secondary lead. balls in the dirt. Like, you know who's the best at balls in the dirt? Spencer Torkelson. Which you would never say that he's the fastest base runner or the guy who's going to take the extra base. Yet, if you go back and look, he did it. First to third is about preparation on where the outfielders are positioned. Is it grass, dirt, grass, which is going to indicate you go. If it hits grass in the infield, hits the dirt, and hits the grass, you're going to be safe more than you're going to be out going first to third. I want to say regardless of how fast you are, but you get a good secondary lead and you get a good break on a ball down off the bat and it goes grass, dirt, grass, you go. And so our guys understood we play at Comerica. It's a big field. Generally speaking, a big field will push outfielders to play deeper if they're a tick undisciplined or they're not used to playing in Comerica. What does that mean? It means it takes longer for the ball to get to them. So all of that matters that when you're factoring in, an aggressive base running style. The other thing you have to be willing to make an out. And I know I get asked all the time when we make an out at third, or Joey sends this dude coming around third and he gets thrown out. I mean, it's this running topic. And I keep saying, like, hey, you can ask me about the out safe at third or out safe at home, but the near safe, when guys, it's a bang bang play and Joey sends him and he's safe, or we had this video in spring where it was these random slides at third base because we never give up on the play. And here's Riley, and here's Sweeney, and here's McKinstry. And these guys have these acrobatic, and they're safe. We got to talk about those too.
Yeah.
We can't just talk about the outs. So if you're bold enough to be willing to make an out by completing the play, you're just going to get more bases than the other side. And so we're not running into outs by 10 feet. Those are stupid. We don't want to make foolish decisions and give up outs. But the mindset has to be you're willing to risk when an outfielder is running to the gap. Almost all of our roster can go first to third. Jake Rogers does it. Javi Baez does it. Torkelson does it. Trey Sweeney does it. We're going to be an aggressive team. And one of the best compliments that I get from other coaching staff is like, damn, man, you guys are aggressive. And like, we got you. If we can get you panicked on the front end, we're going to execute during the game and put a lot of pressure on you.
You mentioned it earlier, but Jake Rogers with an inside the park home run last year. Is that good base running instinct, or is that just good luck?
Well, first off, it's good comedy. Watch him run around the bases, slide head first. He's laying flat on his face. When Jake Rogers, the picture on your phone, whenever you have somebody that contacts you or whatever, I have Jake like laying flat on the ground in Cleveland. and that's when he calls me or texts me, that's what pops up. It makes me laugh every time.
Awesome. And last year, obviously, after the deadline, the rotation's banged up. And we'll talk about Tarik in a bit, but to me, it enhanced the season that he had with the fact that for a minute there, he was your only starter at points, mixing in Montero. But, you go with the pitching chaos angle at first out of necessity, and then it becomes this thing that teams are just having immense difficulty figuring out. And every guy that's coming out of the pen or starting is throwing up zeros. I know that you're so focused on the day-to-day and saying, hey, look, we got to focus on today's game and winning today. But was there a point during that run where you kind of were saying to yourself, or maybe to Chris Fetter at one point, like, this is working almost historically well over the last month where every guy is pitching with a sub-2 ERA?
I know. I mean, yeah, of course, we're looking at these guys because you need a couple things. You need buy-in, which the players were willing to do anything. When I met with a group and I was like, are you willing to do whatever it takes to win? If so, I'm going to hit in the third. We're going to create this pitching chaos and try to set guys up for success. And what I wanted was the opponent to be concerned about so many different paths during the game that we could go. In reality, it was a way to break in young pitching, right? Ty Madden, Brant Herter, Salmons came up for a little bit. We had Montero. Hannafy comes up, Gunther comes up. Like we were breaking in a lot of newness. And if I can put them in a position where it's just set up for them to be successful. Like I want Hannafy against righties. I want Gunther against lefties. If I can get the all left-handed lineup in there in Chicago or against Boston, then Herter comes in from a funky angle. They've never seen him before. Throwing 94, turbo sinkers, sweepy sliders. Like he can get through a lineup and we can break them in strength on weakness the best we can, right? So when that stuff started, and then you started to hear like the chirping from the other dugout, the managers, the pitching coaches, the hitting coaches, they were so frustrated with it. It allowed me to be able to sell it to our team as like, hey, by the way, this is playoff baseball. You know, outside of a few like biggest names, Tarik Skubal being one of them, generally where the start's the shortest in the playoffs.
Yeah.
As soon as you get into a little bit of trouble. Now there's these epic, you know, I had it with Garrett Cole and Verlander, Greinke. Like there are guys that Kershaw and Bumgarner back in the day, like the starting pitchers, the epic performances that we remember are longer, but the majority of them are short starts.
Great.
Because when something happens, all hell breaks loose and I got to go to the bullpen. We just did that for a large portion of our season. And so it started to work. So if you have to win a singular game, like obviously the Houston game where we used whatever 8 or 9 starters or 8 or 9 pitchers, and went through the whole nobody got a second look at any pitcher that entire game. And that's probably the best way to win one game. You know, it doesn't always work out that way because you need 9 guys or 8 guys to be really good. But in terms of like playing chess or in terms of setting your guys up for success, if you have the guys that can do it, that is the hardest way for the other team to score. And the fact that all these guys came in and took the ball whenever I gave it to them and got their outs until they handed the ball to the next guy, that was awesome. And there were times during I'm like, you know, having some time with Fed, a coffee, a drink or whatever. And I'm like, this is awesome what we're watching, you know, with what these guys are doing. And we get to do it again tonight and we get to do it again the next day. And then Tarik Skubal takes down seven innings, no runs. And then we get to reset ourselves. So it all worked in conjunction and we'll do it again. Like we will do it again. I don't know when, I don't know for who. But it allows me this year to convince the players like, hey, if I open for you with Herter or with Hannafy or with Brisky or with Vest or with Holton, no one will even bat an eye now because of how successful it was, both on our team and around our organization.
Yeah, it's the 2 best ways to win a game. 1 is by doing the pitching chaos, and 2 is having a Tarik Skubal that can just go 6, 7 scoreless, and you're in pretty good shape. No, it was remarkable, and I think it's one of those things that it helps to have a young team because egos are left at the door at that point. You know, I mean, I think there's guys who get frustrated by, I want to pitch the 9th, I want to pitch the 8th, I want to start, I want to go 5 innings. And the idea of just, you kind of keep handing the baton off to the next guy. It was a ton of fun. And then you brought up all the call-ups and the last call-up of the season last year on that final homestand was Jackson Jobe. And I was, and you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, I was under the impression that was a very I'm not going to say like helter-skelter necessarily, but did you guys have plans of bringing him up at any point before you realized that you were on the verge of clinching a playoff spot?
Yeah. So we talked about it in early September as sort of Scott and I and Greeny, we were sort of looking through the different scenarios. Now, what's different nowadays versus previous years is you only have a certain number of roster spots. So meaning you can only have 28. You can have 14 pitchers, 14 position players. Like back in the day, there was a boatload of guys that could come up because it was open to the 40-man. So when you have the 14 pitchers, there needs to be a real role for him. It can't just be sort of a free pass to come in, get your feet wet. Yeah. We need to do it. And I remember the day I was driving into Comerica and Scott called and we talked for a little bit. He's like, hey, I just wanted to know, do you want Jobe? And I'm like, what? Do I want Jackson Jobe? Yeah, I'll take him tonight, And so we made the decision to get Jackson up there. And the only thing he told me, which he's like, listen, we need to get his feet wet if he's going to be considered for a potential playoff roster. We had not clinched. Right. We were playing Tampa, and then we had the White Sox. And I think we thought we needed to win 3 or 4 games, depending on what was going on with Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that I think we won 2 games against the Rays, maybe 3, and then
you swept them. And then
the first game against the White Sox, we clinched. So we needed to get 2 outings in order to even consider him for the playoff roster. And so, how do you script his debut, and how do you get him into the mix? And so when Jackson came in my office, I was like, "Listen, I'm going to put you in the pen, and I'm probably going to be the only manager that ever puts you in the pen. You're going to be a major league starter for a really long time, but you have a chance to to pitch a couple times and then maybe even be on a playoff roster. So, and he's like, do you know what day I'm going to pitch? And I'm like, no, like that's part of the deal. And so when, he flew his family in and everybody's there anticipating his arrival. And I don't think I pitched him the first night, but the second night I pitched him. And it is single-handedly the coolest pitcher entry into a career that I have ever been a part of. And what is my 12th year managing or whatever it is. I mean, I'm watching our fan base, first off, show up like in an epic way. Second, like as soon as Jackson threw a few balls in the bullpen, like the place was going bananas, anticipating his major league debut. And here he comes running out. He'd never done that before. He's never run from the bullpen to the mound. And here we are in the final stretch. And we were able to squeeze in 2 outings for him. And the next thing you know, I'm putting him in, late game in Houston. Yeah. Sort of baptism by fire.
Yeah, it was such a cool moment, and it was a unique thing. Obviously, you weren't, you're managing the game, but on social media, it was a question of how big does the lead have to be for him to be brought in for that final inning. And we were up, I think it was 5-1, and then Torque and Dingler drove in runs to make it 7-1. And we're like, we're seeing Jobe tonight. I remember the people on Bally, or now FanDuel, they didn't cut away, so we got to see his entire walkout on TV. It was fantastic.
So cool.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, no, that was a kind of a storybook moment. That was really one of the moments where I'm like, dude, I think we might be going to the playoffs. This is pretty cool with the way that was working. And I brought him up a minute ago, and we've brought him up a million times on this show. But obviously, the year that Tarik had a year ago, remarkable. And really, even before your run, I remember telling people this season is kind of worth it just for how he's made every fifth day an event. And we've gone through it here. We've been very fortunate here with the Verlanders of the world and the Scherzers. But one thing that I was thinking about with you is, like, in the grand scheme of things, you have not been managing that long, and you've managed 3 Cy Young winners now. Yeah. And I think there are 3 Cy Young winners who were in differing parts of their career. I think Keuchel had pitched around 200 innings the year before, and so he'd kind of understood the grind at this point. You had Verlander, who's like the thoroughbred of all thoroughbreds, who was in his mid-30s, winning his 2nd Cy Young. And then you had Tarik, who came in with tremendous expectations, but last year was the first time he'd started 30 games, and it was the first time he'd pitched that many innings. When you're dealing and managing with a player who is that locked in, who's pitching that kind of baseball, do you revert back to how you managed Keuchel in 15 and Verlander in 19, or do you try to view Tarik as his own entity?
Yeah, I think you try to view him as his own guy because they're all really different. What you learn is those are your favorite days to manage. Like you get to like, hey, Tarik, here you go. Here's the ball. Let us hop on your back, and we didn't play perfect baseball behind him because there's a great like pressure that comes with guys like him that pitch. Right. And that you feel like the team is like, all you got to do is score a couple runs. And sometimes it feels like ridiculously hard to do it. And when you look in September, we lost a couple of Skubal started games, which is almost unheard of. Like he didn't necessarily lose them, but we lost the lead late in Oakland. We had a couple of hiccups in his starts. And when you were drawing out September, it was like, okay, we can rely on winning this game, this game, this game, and this game because Skubal's pitching. And that's not how it necessarily went. But with Tarik, I think that the hardest part about managing an elite pitcher like this is where is the balance of where your reliever at 100% is better than your tiring ace. Yeah. Right. And I had that with Verlander and Cole. I had Greinke for a little bit. Dallas was completely dominant at home. I think he went undefeated at home. I think you're right. In 2015 in the small park, but he's a ground ball pitcher. And you always have this notion of like Tarik is just as good as some guys at full speed, even though he's at pitch 90 to 100 or 100 to 110. And so what was unique about this one for managing Skubal last year was he came in with a lot of curiosity on how he was going to bounce back from the broken season the year before. He had proven that he was healthy. He had been incredibly dominant. Like you could see the it factor and the pitch is getting better and the changeup evolved as a wipeout pitch. The velocity started to increase as he was rehabbing. Going into last season, you have a little bit of that curiosity on how it's going to carry throughout the season. And then, as it got better and better, we started featuring him. Like he goes to the All-Star game and gets to pitch. And then he pitches on Sunday Night Baseball in the Williamsport game, the Little League Classic. And dominates the Yankees, and like the attention grew on him. His prep didn't change, his demeanor didn't change. He's got no ego, and he was ridiculously dominant. And of all the Cy Young Award winners that I've managed, including some that didn't win it in the year I managed it, but they've won it in their career, wire to wire, and being unanimous, and the Triple Crown, like it just gets better and better the more you describe his season. But I love sitting in New York with him when he got the award. I got the opportunity to present it to him, and watching him be emotional on that big scene, and in New York at the writers' dinner. He's on the podium with the Chris Sales of the world, and when Ohtani got the MVP and Judge got the MVP, like, you're a dude, like you're a guy, like you are a star. And yet, you know what he did the day before he got his award in Cy Young in New York is he played catch at St. John's because he had to throw a bullpen. It was a throw day for him, and he's like searching out an indoor facility in New York City, about to get the Cy Young. Like, I love this dude because of what he's about, and the easiest decision this season so far is, hey, by the way, Tarik Skubal is going to pitch opening day.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's one of my favorite Tiger seasons of all time because of that. And you did such a great job of describing it there. I think that what is so unique about him, and we're talking about a guy who was best pitcher in baseball all year last year, is like I feel like there's another gear still, and that's what's scary with the stuff that he has and the fact that he's so consistently focused on getting better, which I feel like is, when you have a season like what he had last year, it can become, not for him, but it can become easy to almost rest on your laurels and assume that.
Well, let me follow up on that, because it's a topic that's interesting. So every year in the spring, we meet with every player and give them things that they can work on, not only in the spring, but during the season, right? So it might be a new pitch for a pitcher, or it might be location. It might be, hey, Riley Green, get the ball off the ground. He hits the ball on the ground a little bit too much. Or Colt Keith, you got to open up a certain side of the field. And there's things like that goals that we want. And so Fett and I sit down and we're like, what are we going to tell Tarik? Like, what, and the reality is he came in and he didn't want to hear all the love. Like, he didn't want the hug. He's like, I think he like rants, like, my slider sucks, and I don't like when I go front door, the ball leaks over the plate. And you're like letting him go. And like, okay, you're right. We can improve your slider. You got to get into counts where you don't overexpose your changeup. When you go up, you need to go up. You don't be a general strike thrower, be an intentional strike thrower. Like, there were things that the spring we wanted him to go after, and that's all he wants. Like, he's obsessed with getting better, and that separates him from the guy who feels comfortable and settled. I don't think he's ever going to be comfortable. Like, that's just not in his DNA, and it's scary, because I think there are things that he can get better at, despite coming off of the performance of last season.
That's a very unique story to hear. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, you love hearing that as a fan, and it is like, you brought it up of him getting the recognition and being, the dude here. It is, as a fan, that much more special that, like, I mean, we were streaming his minor league starts, and now it's this guy's winning, the Triple Crown, winning the Cy Young. It's been, that glow up has been incredible. But kind of moving ahead here to what we got here in 2025. And I wasn't originally planning on starting with this, but the news has allowed me to kind of, I've had to pivot. Look, the injuries, to the position players are apparent. I mean, you have three outfielders out right now. And, I'm not going to come on here and ask you, hey, injuries suck, because obviously the answer is yes. Like, nobody wants an injured team. I guess from your perspective, is it more frustrating when it's a young team and young players getting banged up, because you probably expect, I don't want to say expect better health out of them, and you never know what's going to happen. But is it just frustrating because you feel like you have a very young roster that isn't a point where there maybe shouldn't be as many injuries as there is right now?
Yeah. Some of these are pretty random. Like, I still don't know how to describe Parker Meadows' injury. Wenzel's kind of snuck up on us a little bit. Vierling had no problems whatsoever. So there are some randomness to this stuff. I think the disappointing part is the beginning of the season, and we have a gauntlet of a schedule to start the year. We start with the Dodgers and go to Seattle, which they always have great pitching. We see a lot of good teams early, and I don't like missing sort of our planned out team at the beginning of the season. Now, the next man up mentality, this is not going to be forever. We get so obsessed with opening day rosters, and and this is our team. And then you apply like this analysis to a team. This is 162. And you're like, no, it's just the first 10 days, or it's the first 20 days. Like our first transaction last year, I think, was like 7 days into the season, and you're going different pitchers, and maybe somebody, gets hurt, or maybe, like Jace Young, as an example, goes down and gets his swing right, and maybe he comes back. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's not going to be the same. And so in the end, I do this in football, or I do this in college football, or the NFL that I follow closely. We get too fixated on what this roster means over 162, when you and I both know that's not always how it's going to play out. No. That we don't have time to dwell on, sort of games without Parker and without Matt and without Wenzel, because we got to go play. And so for me as a manager, I'm going to immediately go to getting the most out of whoever those guys that are going to be replaced. I've never seen a position get crushed the way that we did in center field in the spring. And that's just our reality. And so it's actually 4 if you count Akil, who
that's right.
A little bit of center, probably would have been a beneficiary, or at least part of the conversation of being the beneficiary of this had he not had the hamate issues. So we're down a little bit, but not out. Like, we have capable guys to fill in. We can, we will play Riley in there a little bit. We will play the guys that we feel like we have, or there's always the possibility that rosters change over time. And then when we get Veerling back and when you get Parker back, we will soon forget the agony that we are currently living through, right? My job as the manager is to get all that noise out of these players, because the guys replacing them, I'm not going to let us disrespect them like they can't help us win. And we have to go win as many games as we can, with or without. It's probably going to sound like a sales pitch, but we won 86 games and made the playoffs, and we lost Carey for 60 plus games. We lost Riley for 50, 60 games. Parker had been sent down and missed a large portion. Torque had been sent down and missed a large portion. That's just the baseball season, and we're going to need someone to step up and maybe play better than expected. We're going to need somebody to play better as expected. And we got to deal with it if we want to be this team over 162 that we claim we want to be. And that's the message that I've delivered to the players, and that's how we're going to live, because, like, come opening day, the Dodgers don't care.
Right.
Like, we get to Seattle doesn't care. They have their own issues, and then the season goes and it doesn't stop.
Yeah, and I think, obviously you don't want injuries, but there's been some good that has come from this, in the sense that you've seen some guys' bats wake up in spring training who are playing their way into the lineup. And the kind of the obvious one that I transitioned to is Torkelson, homered again, last night, OPS over 1,000 in the spring. And you brought up that, you feel, I think it was, you were on 97.1 talking about this, and you said you feel like you see his confidence growing as a player. Mm-hmm. And, we pay so much attention to batted ball data, and ultimately it's a results-oriented business. But as a manager, just kind of on the day-to-day, what are some of the telltale signs in your mind that a player's confidence is growing, that even if the results aren't there, they are due for a breakout?
Yeah, I mean, I get to watch the reaction to success and failure. I get to see the process. We talk daily. We have a hitters meeting every day, and we talk about what our game plan is. And so then I know whether the guy goes. And if I'm conceding pull side power, and you see him carve a few balls to right center field, or you saw him hit a homer. He actually popped a homer that was outside. He was strictly going outside lane, hitting approach, and where the ball goes, it goes. But he hit one out to left center, just left of the batting eye, on a ball out over the plate. So are you executing your game plan? And then how do you respond to success, failure? That might be I rifle a ball to center. I think a younger version of Torque would have taken the bad, necessarily bad, but critiqued himself in the good and bad. Now I'm seeing him critique his process. The results are taking care of themselves. He has had an incredible camp, and I see a more athletic version of him. I see a more confident where he's playing with some freedom. His defense has gotten a little bit better. There's just a step forward in that, and then now the next step is to go into the season and test it there. And I think for me, when you see someone confident in their process, he's too talented to not have these bursts of good performance. and what he needs is less noise around him on what he hasn't done to this date, or what someone's, sort of appointed expectations are, and just go be the best version of you. We get this version that we had in spring in the season, we will have, a very, very productive player, and someone who, can hit in the middle of the order, can stay in there right on right, can DH a little bit, play first. And when we signed Glaber and we moved Colt to first, we looked him dead in the eye and was like, hey man, there's a role for you on this team if you do X, Y, and Z. And he did X, Y, and Z and then some. And now he's fought his way, on the roster and factoring in, as would have been expected, with or without the Glaber signing.
And he had a quote about a month ago, maybe a little bit over a month ago, about the idea of just kind of simplifying things as a hitter. And I think that it's one of those areas where he was like, look, here are the expectations, right? But you have a lot of analysis about what's going wrong. It's not hitting velocity, it's pop-ups. Do you think that there are times in which a player in a lot of ways can almost become too consumed by their shortcomings to a way where it just destroys their confidence?
Just too much information sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody's built to have like iPads and iPhones, like giving you all the information. Some guys are. Some guys need every detail. Other guys don't. And if you can't self-regulate and manage that sort of demon inside that I was a perfectionist. I wish I would have done less as a player. I don't know how good I would have been, but I know I could think through things to the point of where I would have a good day and not allow myself the joy, and have a bad day and beat myself up. I mean, it's human nature. I think is more information is not always better for every player. And I think his confidence has grown because his process is locked in. It does not mean he gives himself a pass whenever he misses a pitch to hit.
Of course.
But I would urge everybody to realize the failure rate in baseball is pretty high. So every time he punches, or every time he pops up, or he caps a ball, with an exit velocity that's not optimal, like, it doesn't mean that he's not being productive. It's just a really hard sport. And now we got to see how he responds to that. You get stretches of 30, 40, 50 at-bats like that, and then you got to try to find a way to get yourself out of it. But don't overreact to a tough day, because like Blake Snell's throwing 100 and it cuts in on you at the last second, and I don't center it. Like, welcome to the big leagues. And I think he's doing a better job of understanding that.
For sure. And you mentioned the Colt Keith move to first base, and I wanted to ask you about that. At what point in the offseason was that decision made?
When Glaber became the possibility, when we were getting to the point in the red zone, so to speak, of like closing in on Glaber, I had a conversation with him, and then I had a group conversation with Joey Cora, Glaber, and me. And it became like, I'm interviewing him, he's interviewing us. We're talking about second base. We're talking about ways he can get better. The agent and our front office were kind of dotting I's and crossing T's. Then that made the decision of like, okay, we're going to shift Colt over to first a little bit. He's still going to stay at second base because I'm going to DH Glaber every now and then, play Colt at second. That's a way to get torque in the lineup. Jahan was going to start to learn first base a little bit. Like, we just decided to optimize the entire roster and give us as many decision points as we could. But what forced that was a now crowded second base, with Glaber being the everyday second baseman. So we called Colt individually, Scott and I did, and walked him through what, why, and then put a plan in place with Joey to get him the bigger glove and get him a little bit more acclimated. So we're the real sales pitch, so to speak, or the real meat behind the conversation is like, we're going to do anything we can to improve this offense and be a better team. Glaber does that. It asks you to shift over and play a different position for as much as every day, or as little as 5 times a week or 4 times a week, and play second and DH. And Colt was all in from the very first call, as was Torque, because Glaber made us a better team.
With the injuries kind of being where they are, and obviously with Vierling, it impacts you in multiple ways, where it's not just the outfield, but also the third base spot. Is there a possibility of Glaber getting reps at third at any point?
I don't think so, because we haven't approached him about it. I know it's been a topic. I get asked about the New York stuff, and I'm like, I'm not in New York. I don't really know.
Right. Yeah.
Wasn't in those conversations. I have no idea. I don't care to ask Glaber about it. We see him at second base, and we see us having a number of solutions at third. Starting with McKinstry and Ibanez, Jace is still going to factor in. I know we sent him out, and that may have surprised some people, but we got to get his swing right for him to really hit consistently, and we think he will, and he could be back in short order as well. So it is still sort of an evolving situation at third base. But when we got Glaber, we need to get him better at second, and we need to get him, sort of locked in on hitting in the top third of our order, and we feel like the best solution for that is him at second base.
Yeah, and it was something because of the injuries and the way that the infield could have aligned if he were to get reps there, that people were asking about it. There's three things. I call this the trifecta of questions that or people that Tiger social media likes to talk about the most. I brought up torque earlier. Hobby is the other one, but the other very popular topic is carry against lefties and how and that matchup. And it's been an interesting thing because Carey just hits. He's just you talk about a guy, and I'm not in the day-to-day, but you talk about how he doesn't strike me as a guy who even needs a ton of data. He sees ball, he hits ball. It's a very simplistic approach with him. But in terms of the whole Carey against left-handers argument, you said at points last year, like, he is going to get at bats against lefties. It's not a 100% hit rate of we're taking him out every time a lefty gets brought into the game. My question for you is, what will be the intangibles behind that decision making? Because the sample size at the major league level isn't big at all. So are you going to base it on minor league numbers? Is it going to be more of a feel thing? What's going to be kind of the inspiration for when he gets ABs against lefties?
So, big topic. I get asked about it a ton.
Right.
All over the place. I get sort of the curiosity and listen, I'm curious too how he can adjust. But it's just a matter of the cost. Like, it's not always about carry. So I think part of this is that Andy Ibanez, and the question I would ask all the sort of managers in waiting, the ones that want to manage a lot, is like, are you willing to punt the Ibanez at bats to find out for Carp? Some guys are yes, some people are no. I'm trying to win as many games as we can, or at least manage as many games as we can, and so I'm always sort of balancing some of that. Not every left-handed at bat is created the same. The left-handed at bat with 2 outs and a runner on first, or nobody on, or the non-leverage at bats is way different than Josh Hader hitting. Josh Hader in the playoffs, and Andy Ibanez comes in and does are you willing to take a lesser matchup, just to find out? And so it's not sort of blind one way or the other. Like, hey, I'm just going to give him all at bats, or I'm going to take everyone away. Part of the criteria is going to be how is Carey competitively against some of these at-bats. So, like, the left-handed at-bats in spring matter. Some of them were good, some of them weren't good. The left-handed at-bat situation of the game is going to matter. There are some that, like, to be honest with you, it's way better to have him have the most important at-bat against a right-handed pitcher than it is for him to just start and be stuck in the 7-hole because I got to move him down the order because it's a left-handed starter. So I think the criteria is going to, Carey can help create some of that by how he defends himself. It's not all about power. It's not all about being the same hitter that he is against right-handed pitching, but it is about defending yourself versus the other options that we have. If Jahan's on this team and he's on the bench, if Ibanez is on the bench, now we have Margot, who historically has killed lefties. The big question is, like, would you just sit those guys and not put your best guy in there against that matchup, for the sake of Carey getting a rep against a tough left-handed pitcher? And I'm going to keep chipping away at it to hopefully keep him in the game as much as I can. What I don't know is mid-game, when the bases are loaded and I have Andy Ibanez, is that the at-bat that wins us the game? Mm-hmm. And I have to think about all that stuff when I'm making that decision, as opposed to just throw him out there and let him see. He can hit left-handed pitching. Can he do it consistently? I don't know. But the funny part about this offseason, and it was actually sort of frustrating for a manager, is I go on the set at MLB Network and I get I don't want to say criticized, but I get joked with about Kerry Carpenter not playing Game 5 against Matt Boyd. And I'm like, hey, bro, he was hurt.
Right.
Like, it wasn't a choice. Even if I wanted to play him, I couldn't have played him that day. He was hobbling to first, hits a ball off the wall against a right-handed pitcher, couldn't even get to second base. Right. So I was like, man, I'm taking hits when things are going well. I'm taking hits when people are joking with me when he's not available. And so I got a nice laugh out of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the conundrum you run into as a manager. I mean, I think that Kerry has had a ton of success and it feels like against righties, just not a whole huge learning curve. Like he's just kind of come in and hit right away. Fans connected with him. Like, so it's one of those things. Yeah, but it's also, I mean, like and I'm not just saying this just because we've had him on, but like I'm a J-Hen guy too, and I think that he's going to crush lefties. And you take that, the idea of kind of recreating a player in the aggregate, like those two guys together, you could be looking at 35 home run, 100 RBI production. It's like you'll take that 100 times out of 100. Want to go back? One
of the things on the Carp thing, because I think it's important, and you watch so many games, is like the big curiosity is how people manage against them. Yeah. So obviously you get that fourth, fifth inning at bat, and I started to race to the bench because for that team last year to win as many games as we did, we needed to win every low marginal victory. The question is like, can I chase the starter out because I hit Carp in the 2 or 3, and the third time through comes fast for those guys? And if they start taking guys out, do I do that in the 5th or 6th? Now we go to Dodger Stadium, they have 4 or 5 left-handed relievers. I can assure you, every time the lineup rolls, they're going to have a lefty ready for Carp, right? Yeah, right? So I've got to make a determination on how much leverage is that at bat and what's the matchup with any of our other guys. But it's seeing teams manage against Carp. It reminds me of how they're managing against Greeny. Those two. It's why I put them back to back. I'm going to give you 2 decisions right away, and see where I go with it based on my available matchups.
With Parker out, there kind of creates, and I know you'll mix and match, but there kind of creates a hole at the top of the order against right-handed pitching. I've seen you, and it would be most likely against lefties. We've seen J-Hen get reps at the top of the order against lefties. Against right-handers, I mean, I don't want to, you to give away too many tricks of the trade here, but have you honed in on who you think might be the best option at the top of the order?
Well, Wenzel was going to be my decision.
Well, okay, so option 3, yeah.
So, I do like having a left-handed guy up there if I can. So the big question going into the season is going to be, is it Zach McKinstry, knowing I can get him these right-handed matchups, and then I can always hit Ibanez for him, or I can bring Margot in and move guys around. And, can I get McKinstry a third right-handed pitcher at bat by hitting him at the top? He did that a little bit a couple of years ago. The good version of him was like an insane player in August last year. When he struggles, I get a lot of questions about, him and his role on a team. The other option is going to be Riley. And I always wonder, I did it with George Springer in Houston, and George became like a huge threat from the first pitch of the game. People start throwing breaking balls, and they got so panicked about the first hitter of the game, and I moved Altuve down. Even though even sightline wise, or just sort of conventional wisdom would be like, oh yeah, Springer's a middle of the order bat, and Altuve's the leadoff type. I don't know if I'll put Riley up there because I like the traffic there. I think the third option is going to be Glaber, who not necessarily a lefty at the top of the order, but he conducts such a really good at bat. He knows the strike zone. He led off for the Yankees last year. It's really when he took off. In order to do that, we need a right-handed bat to hit in the middle to separate the Green, Carpenter, Colt Keith, like those left-handed hitters that I have that I liked a bunch in the first 5. You need either a righty at the top and a righty in the 4-hole, or you need to start with 11 and I'll hit righties in the 3 and 5. Does that make sense? Split those guys up. It depends on who kickstarts it. I'm leaning towards stacking the lefties at the top with Z-Mac or Greeny. But you could see a Greeny Carp. You want to make a decision with a right-handed starter faster, then put Green and Carpenter at the top and have the manager the third time through. The 19th hitter is Riley Green. That's a real decision point for that manager.
Yeah. I mean, I got to say, choosing between Jose Altuve and George Springer at the top of the order, I mean, I'm not calling it a cushy job necessarily. I remember those two guys at their peak. I mean, those are pretty good. Not exactly a Sophie's choice with those two. Also, you got an MVP and a perennial All-Star. But I want to talk about the pitching depth real quick, just because I think this is something that's new to the organization over the last several years. And you alluded to the fact that, like, we're going to make transactions early on in the campaign. And you look at the way this rotation's mapped out. Like, I thought Cater Montero looked really good in spring. I think his stuff looks solid. Is not going to be in the team to start the season. And to me, like, that's comfort, because there's injuries. It's just inevitable with pitchers that there's going to be turnover. I guess this is your 5th year here, as manager. Do you feel like the organization has done a better job over the last several years of giving you the proper depth, so that in case a guy goes down, you can fill him in with somebody that's going to be capable of pitching good baseball?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe that is the gap between these decisions. So, like, let's start starter 4 and starter 7 or 8. And, like, Sawyer Gibson-Long is going to come back. Yeah. And I'm really excited about getting him back. Obviously, Cater's going to be in AAA. I'm excited to get him. You're seeing the emergence of some guys, Miller and Melton, 2 minor league guys that pitched in the prospect game. Like, those guys are going to start to inch in AA and AAA. Matt Manning, we still need to squeeze more out of him to make him a viable starting. Like, you have a lot of names between starters, let's call it 4 through 8. Right. And the same goes for the bullpen. Like, one of the reasons we were really good last year in the pen was the reliever 1, and you could pick whoever you want it to be, and reliever 8, and then reliever 9 in September. That gap was pretty narrow. Right. Like, there wasn't, like, all of a sudden this, like, unusable guys in those roles. That's gotten way better. And I'm not even talking about reliever 9, 10, 11, 12. Who got sent out. Last year, Bo Brisky got sent out, didn't give up a run in spring training, he ended up closing in the playoffs. 2 years ago, Will Vest gets sent out, goes to the minor leagues, comes back, and is a prominent and made the last pitch in the Houston series when we won that series. You look at Hannafy and Gunther, like guys that were, minor league free agents or waiver claims, Tyler Holton waiver claim, and we've been able to, like, really build a stock of arms who can pitch in any role against any part of the lineup. And that, to me, is where things shifted to where we've been in so many games because of the quality of arms that we can throw at you in a variety of ways. And so, yes, long-winded answer to say we're in a really good position. You can never have too much pitching. And despite these hard conversations at the end of spring, we sent Alex Lang down last year, right? And we haven't gotten him back because of injury, and we've missed him a ton, like his swing and miss at the back end of a bullpen. So I like where we're at as an organization. It creates some tough conversations and dilemmas, and there's going to be a ton of debates. You're going to do it. Everybody's going to do it on whether we should have this guy or that guy. Imagine think about where you were years ago, whenever we were just hoping that we had enough arms to fill out the roster. And now we're talking about a bunch of, angry Toledo guys because they are probably major league arms not making this team.
Right. And part of that depth is what you added in free agency, bringing back Jack Flaherty. And it was really interesting kind of watching his resurgence last year. And the word that I kept using was comfortable. It just seemed like he really fit into your guys' culture there. He bought into what you guys were selling in the pitching department, and really the swing and miss and strike throwing in general did such a night and day improvement when you look at the walk rate, strikeout rate, what have you. It was kind of written on the wall at a certain point that he was going to be up in trade conversations last offseason. Do you have conversations with a player either before that happens or after that happens about the potential of him coming back? Did you think it was a possibility?
Oh, I go recruit mode from the minute that they get traded. I'm like, listen, you have an opportunity. And I do think this place has really developed a good reputation, not only with Jack, but Michael Lorenzen when he came here and got better. Andrew Chafin has been back a couple of different times. when you talk to other free agents, and we've recruited a few of them that we didn't land, they give you a ton of feedback on what people are saying about our operation. And with Jack specifically, we just didn't think he was going to be a real option for us. I mean, we were chasing other free agents and realigning the roster, but we stayed in touch. I mean, one of the things that's built is trust. And so whether it's, him talking to me or Fed about his situation or his pitches or the World Series, or like you connect with these guys and you build that trust. And when the cards kind of fell where they were and he was still a free agent and Scott went and got him, we immediately went to work, because one of the bad instincts you can have as a coach or as a manager is you have this established guy making a ton of money and he comes in sort of highly acclaimed and you just let him be. Like, that's not how we roll. Like, Fett goes to work right away with, like, we need to tweak this, we need to tweak that, and the trust is built with him and Jack that Jack's an immediate yes, and they went to work. So there's ways for him to get better, but he came here because of trust, and he knows that he's part of a good culture. He's part of a good team, and he has a staff around him that's going to push him, and that's a good marriage.
Yeah, and so it should be a lot of fun with that rotation. I mean, obviously, hopefully you get a full year of Reese, and you got Jobe coming in. And I haven't even brought it up, but obviously with Mize pitching the way he's looked in spring, that's massively encouraging. Two more quick questions for you. Number one is, at the end of when you guys clinched, and you did the same thing after you beat Houston as well, but you, like, in all-time Detroit Tigers social media clip is right before the champagne popped, and you did the, I guess you wanted to be a playoff team, which is like almost a Jason Benetti-esque turn of phrase, right? And did you think of that before you clinched, or was that an in-the-moment thing?
A little bit of both. I mean, I've been fortunate to be in a few of those, and you do want to, like, send a message, but they don't want to hear you talk for a long time. But if you can deliver something that connects that team, and that's kind of what I do in a nutshell as a manager. Like, my job is to connect this group. All spring, we try to connect this group, and I have a meeting every day in spring, and we'll do, bring up certain things or talk about certain ways, and I always try to circle it back, and you have that one moment where you've captured their attention, right? Like, everybody's anticipating that, and those are so fun. I think that the topic in general, like, I know the themes that resonate with this team. There's so many things that go on behind the scenes you guys don't get to see, and that was one of them. And so that one I'm proud of, because it hit every person in that clubhouse, and it also resonated with our fans, and the wait for a decade to feel that feeling of accomplishment. It was so cool, man. And I like it. I mean, obviously my friends and my family and everybody's talked about those moments, because they're memories that last forever. I still remember my first ever one in front of a team in 2015 when we clinched the wild card. And, I hope to have many more of those in a Tiger uniform.
Have you noticed the eerie similarities between that 15 team and last year's Tigers? I mean, all the way down to having a left-handed Cy Young winner. I think you guys both won 86 games. It was both wild card spot. It was, hey, good. History repeats itself. Both won a playoff series, right? You guys in 15 going to New York and winning the one game. But yeah, I was thinking about the other day.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, it's different team and different strengths, but it is like, I've watched this team grow up, and I kind of joke with, like, that they're all getting married. They're going to all end up having kids. It's like the same, like, the grow up cycle of a team. But the belief is what I'm most proud of is this organization, believes that we're a factor now. And that's what winning does. That's what a good season does. I mean, I will say one of my meetings I had last year, and I looked around the room, and not one person in the room, in the players had won as a Tiger, and I'm not talking about West Michigan and Erie and Toledo. I'm talking about, like, Detroit Tiger in the big leagues. Right. And that hit me. I have a bunch of coaches that have won World Series. I've had a bunch of coaches that have been around, but you look at the players, they hadn't been on a winning team. No Casey Mize, no Tarik Skubal, none of them. And so I look around the room now, and they've all been a part of it. With last season happening the way that it did. And that changes everything for an organization's expectations and their psyche. And that's similar to what I experienced in my previous stop.
For sure. Yeah. And obviously it's been a unique thing where, because when you arrived in the few years before, like we were not just baseball, but Detroit sports in general were just not doing well. I mean, the Lions were bad. Red Wings weren't doing great. Pistons. We've seen this resurgence, not just from you guys, but, you know, from other teams in the city. And obviously you went to at least one Lions game this year. I remember they showed the sideline for it. I asked Tarik this, but I'll ask you it as well. Do you feel like you've gotten to know Detroit as a city better now that the team has experienced a little bit more success?
Yeah, I think connecting with the cities is cool. I mean, downtown is thriving. The sports teams are downtown, and you start to, when you go out in Detroit, you know, I love when fans say hello, or they'll talk about where they were when we clinched, or there's always something that connects, you know, this city to its sports teams. You know, I think as you've seen, like the Lions get better, the Pistons get better, we got better, the Red Wings, like this is a great time to be in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I think the fans are as loyal as they come. They are as deeply rooted, you know, Detroit sports fans as you'll find in any city that I've ever been to. And there's a certain connection between that and this fighter mentality that we have as these teams. You know, like people doubt the Lions and they go out and they've been incredibly good, you know, and you have the resurgence of Goff and you have Dan's leadership, and you go to the Pistons and they have all this young team and these big number 1 overall draft picks. And what do? They go and make a push. And, you know, the Wings are obviously have been in the mix the last couple of years, and they're trying to find a way to get over the hump. And then you have us on a playoff run. Like, that's pretty good, you know, combo of not only hope, but also some execution. And for sure, this is a great city. And I think I say it all the time, like, it's an underrated city, you know, in general. It's an underrated and underappreciated sports city, but the people who are here make it what it is. And what I watched last season, you know, as a Tiger, and how this city rallied around this team, it makes me super excited for opening day. Yeah,
same here. A couple more things real quick. I told you this. We corresponded after you guys clinched last year, but I get a chance to say it to you in person. Some of the most fun I've ever had watching sports, AJ, what you guys did last year. I mean, it was unbelievable the way you guys came out of nowhere, and the way the fans rallied and the way that you guys rallied. And just on a personal level for you, having been someone who's been around this fan base and the city for a long time, I think it's one of the greatest coaching or managerial jobs I've ever seen. You did an unbelievable job with this team a year ago, man. I mean, it was really inspiring. Secondly, and this is, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back too much, but I've been doing these silly Tiger videos since you were managing Houston and when I was in my college dorm room. And so the fact that you've given me the opportunity to do this is very humbling that you've agreed to do it not just once but twice, and hopefully we can make it an annual tradition. So I'll speak for all fans when I just say thank you for what you've done and what you're continuing to do. This is far and away the most interested that I've seen this fan base in a long time, and we had your back last year, but now it's in full force, man. I mean, we can't help but be appreciative of the job you and the job you're getting what you're getting out of these players. It's been really a lot of fun, man.
No, I appreciate it, and we're gonna keep trying to make you proud, man. I know you love Detroit sports, and I know everybody is behind us. So I appreciate the kind words and look forward to more memories together.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for being on the show.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah, so that was the thing. That was fun. Yeah, I thought we asked good questions. He's just such an insightful guy, man. He's such a sharp guy, and we even talked a little bit off the air. He's one of my favorite people in baseball, just regardless of Tiger stuff, to listen to talk about the sport. And he just gets it. We've been lucky to have him. He's made a lot of us who championed his hire back in during COVID look very smart. So he's going to continue to do his thing. And it's that calming influence where, like, as a fan, I'm looking at the 3 injuries in the outfield and being like, but you hear him talk about it, it's like he has belief in every guy on this roster, and in turn, it makes me have a lot of belief in the guys on this roster. So God bless AJ Hinch. I appreciate him coming onto the show and making this hopefully an annual thing. You can find all of our content at CastellaniContent.com. You can find me on Twitter at Castellani2014. We're updating this stuff all the time, TikToks, post-game videos, what have you, interviews. So you can look forward to all of that. This is the kind of stuff that I'm just very proud of. And I hope that you guys are receptive to it as well. Shout out obviously to Austin, who continues to put the touches on this to make me look better than I have any right to. These are moments that, regardless of whatever frustrations, I greatly appreciate as a creator. And this stuff wouldn't be really possible if not for Tiger fans who've kind of been with us along the way and built things up. And we're going to have so much fun this baseball season, regardless of how things shape up. We always do. This is our team. I have my memes. I have my catchphrases, my puns. I'm gonna use all the bells and whistles this year, and hopefully we can be rooting for a team that's winning the AL Central. So appreciate you guys so much, and appreciate AJ obviously for chatting it up. You guys are the best. Have a great rest of your day. Go Tigers. Peace and happiness.